Run, river, run, run through the hills. Run, river, run to the sea. Run, river, run to your place beneath the sun. Run, river, run over me.
Hi, this is Jan Lewis. Welcome to be my guest. Today we have from Narragansett, Rhode Island, we have Michelle Fishpaw on, and she is the author of the true story about her daughter Claire, and it's called Claire's Voice. Welcome, Michelle. This is, you don't put it down. I'm just going to put it just this way. You know, parents out there, especially grandparents who've had this happen, shaken baby syndrome. Later I'm going to share what happened with my own son, but this is fantastic. Your younger daughter did the cover.
Correct.
Beautiful job. Beautiful.
Thank you.
And Claire, the little baby we're going to be talking about, her daughter is now 22. She's now 22. And she's doing well.
Yes,
Yeah.
she's very high functioning.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, now, Claire, when did you decide to write this?
So I've been working on this book for the past 20 years. So I would put the book on the shelf, take it off the shelf, work on it a little bit at a time. It was very therapeutic and cathartic just to get my words out onto the computer screen.
Yeah.
But it was also difficult taking my mind to places it didn't want to go, very painful, dark memories.
I like the way she starts it, and it hit me right from chapter 1. First sentence. Parents, finding a quality in-home child care provider was one of the single most important choices that John, that's her husband, that John and I were ever going to make in life. After a thorough search that included numerous phone interviews and visits scheduled through a child care agency, we selected a woman with the highest qualifications in their system. She's going to share to us what she went through. That's just the beginning. Tell us now, from the beginning, tell us what happened. You noticed about Claire. Tell us what happened.
Sure. So we had Claire. She was a honeymoon baby, and it was during our second year of marriage. And so John and I were new parents. Our biggest thing was finding a quality child care provider. I was a teacher at the time, and we just needed care part-time, 3 days a week. On the fourth day of care, when I went to the sitter's home, who was recommended by a child care agency, highly recommended. She was the highest tier in the system. All the boxes were checked. She had all of the right responses. People in our neighborhood were using her. A pediatrician was taking their child to this woman. An anchor news station was taking their child. So it was in an affluent neighborhood. She wasn't the cheapest out of who we had interviewed. She had her own daughter the same age as Claire, and I thought how lucky that we found someone so qualified to watch Claire. On the fourth day of care, when I went to the sitter's home, I had to instruct the sitter to call 911.
And you had a feeling before that. You said something wasn't right.
Something wasn't right. Anyone that would have walked in and didn't know Claire would have seen a child in distress and would have known she needed help.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I asked the sitter, why weren't we called? Why didn't you call 911? And there was no response. So after I instructed her to call 911, the squad came and rushed Claire and I to the hospital, Children's Hospital, and they couldn't, after running several tests, they were having trouble figuring out what it was. The doctor finally asked me after several hours, if there was a chance she had gotten into any poisons in the house. That's when we said we had a new sitter, so anything was possible. A CAT scan was ordered, and it came back with showing pools of blood on both sides of her brain. A retinal scan was followed. There were pools of blood behind both of her eyes, and those two signs were indicative of shaken baby syndrome.
Oh, so how long did it take them to come to that diagnosis? Was it just overnight when she was there, or within the next couple days? I forgot.
So it was we were lucky, we lived in a community with excellent medical care with trained professionals. So it was 5 hours after she was in the ER, and she was immediately transferred to the NICU. In the NICU, she ended up spending 8 days in the hospital total. She was on the neurosurgery floor once she got out of the NICU, and then once it was determined she didn't need a brain shunt to relieve the pressure on her brain, then she was transferred to the neurology floor.
That child, she was how old at this point?
11 months.
11
And it
months.
happened 2 days before her first birthday.
Oh my God. So you called John at work, right? And he came right down. And when you got that diagnosis, I can think of what I would have felt like. Were you just like, you just knew that it either had to be the sitter or maybe an older child, somebody else that did it.
Yes, I thought possibly an accident had happened just with the way the care provider was, not giving me any information.
Yeah.
But I had no idea that it was an intentional act of abuse.
It sounds like she just ran out of patience, didn't know how to comfort. Certainly with all of her background, she should have known how to comfort a child. That doesn't make sense to me.
Right, I know, and it's all preventable. If she would have just picked up a phone and called us, or my mom worked 5 minutes from her home at the hospital. My mom was an ER nurse and had interviewed her as well. My husband worked 5 minutes at the hospital. I was 20 minutes away. And we even had a conversation on the third day of care when she had mentioned Claire's inconsolable crying. I didn't realize as a new parent that was a red flag. I thought it was great that she was mentioning this. I was helping her problem solve. When Claire infants cry, and I redirect her with toys and redirect her attention, shared some of my strategies. But I did have a feeling that day when I got into the car and loaded Claire up on that third day, I was crying driving home.
Yeah.
Just because with the way the conversation went, I kind of felt like my parenting skills were almost being
Dismissed? Oh, yeah. Oh. So Claire was just shy of her first birthday.
Correct.
We're talking with Michelle Fishpaw, and she has written the true story of her little girl who's now in her early 20s and doing fine. Claire's voice. And any parents out there have noticed abuse from their child care provider, this book is fantastic. And how can they reach you, Michelle?
Sure. So if you can reach me by my website, michellefishpaw.com. And if you want to email me at clairesvoice@michellefishpaw.com, feel free to email me, reach out with any questions. You can even share your story.
So now she was in the hospital and going home. At what point did you both call the caregiver to let her know, look, this is what has happened and our daughter will not be coming back? Or did you just tell the police and then just let them handle it?
That's a very good question. So while Claire was in the NICU, she was still unconscious. She was unconscious for 19 hours. The cops and the detective came to the hospital to interview John and I. After that interview, they went to the sitter's home to arrest her because she was still trying to watch children.
How many did she watch, Michelle? How many?
So there was a limit with the child care agency of with so many children under a certain age. I think it was up to 6 children, which is a lot.
I took care of my own and 2 others. That was more than enough.
Yes.
I loved it, but that was it.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, boy, I don't know. That's an awful lot of kids, and especially when you have basically a toddler or infant, right? Okay, so the police handled it with her.
Yes.
Did they immediately shut her down?
Yes, they did. They were quick. They were very quick to do that, just because once they knew what Claire was diagnosed with, and they had enough evidence to shut her down so that another child wouldn't get hurt in the process, because it took 3 years for the trial to actually go to court.
And yet she was in this high-end neighborhood, and people had recommended her. Was this the first time at least anybody reported her?
That's another good question. So we didn't know this until after the state went after her and did their own investigation. But with the child care agency, there was another complaint that was filed a year or two before Claire was injured. So in reality, our family should have never come into contact with this woman.
What was that complaint? Did they tell you what it was?
They couldn't tell us exactly, but it was about her behavior involving children.
What's with the silent routine? That I don't understand. Was she aware of a legal thing that if she opened her mouth, told the truth, she'd get sued? That's odd, just silent. And when you met her, was she the silent type?
She was pretty reserved. She was pretty reserved. Throughout this whole process, she has never shown any type of remorse. Whenever John and I had to testify in court, we couldn't be in the courtroom at the same time because we were both witnesses. She was about the same distance that we are right now, with me being on the stand.
She didn't look at you, right?
She did not look at me. She just had this stone cold look and stared straight ahead the whole time, didn't show any kind of emotion.
You're getting the word out now. She never went back to doing childcare, I hope.
No, she has a felony on her record that she's not supposed to have any kind of job watching children.
And you let the agency know this is what happened.
Right.
And they just went, the naive, we didn't know, and she's great, and all this and that. Something in her snap. I don't know, were the other children crying? I mean, children do this. This is what they do. And then her mom, wasn't there. This is perfectly normal.
Exactly. It's a part of early childhood development.
What was her criteria? Did she have a background in elementary education? What was her background?
She was an aide in the local school district working around children. She had her only child is as old as Claire.
Right, so she understood babies. If she shook your baby, what the heck did she do if her own cried?
Right.
And was sure it was her. Nobody else was in the house, no other adults that you know of.
That we know of.
Oh my God. We're talking with Michelle Fishpaw. True story. Her daughter ended up with shaken baby syndrome, and it's called Claire's Voice. And where can they pick up a copy of your book, Michelle?
Sure. So you can pick a copy of my book up on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple Books, or for a personalized copy from my website, michellefishpaw.com.
And also, you can come to the Upton Town Library, go to the dedicated authors, local authors section, and you'll find one of her books. Now, as we go along in the story, you began, which I thought was brilliant, to learn sign language. And it worked a little bit.
Yes.
She liked it.
Yes, that was a breakthrough moment for us.
Yeah.
Definitely. For Claire, for me to understand, because she wasn't talking, she was nonverbal, went back developmentally, and the look on her face when I understood what she needed just by pointing to things, and because she would get so frustrated, and then I got to a point where I was sad that I didn't know what she was trying to tell me or what she needed.
Right. It's like, well, did she have somewhat of a hearing issue too?
So she didn't have a hearing issue. We're lucky with her eyes. She did have some visual discrimination issues with her eyes, as far as like with learning in school, covering up with a piece of paper to block out some of the extra words.
Sure.
Because she would just skip over it and not, and it's not that she didn't know how to do, like for math, the problems, she just didn't see it.
Yeah, it's hard enough for a lot of us. I've got my, well, I would say I did okay until high school, and then,
Yes.
So, all right, so you tried the sign language, and the frustration between you and John was enormous. What you felt was like, you both had coped with it in different ways.
Yes, that's so true.
That's hard.
Men cope with things differently than women,
Yep.
But especially when a child is injured and it's a traumatic event, you know that someone created this situation. From a mom's perspective, I mean, we both wanted what was best for Claire.
Yeah.
I was very aggressive. I followed the doctors and the therapist as far as with pediatric rehab, all the therapies.
Yeah.
I did what, you know, above and beyond, whatever was recommended, I did it because I just knew we were on a timeline because they said by age 3, just to do as much as you can, not to stop after age 3. But that was the chance with the amount of brain damage that once your brain is damaged, it never can regenerate what was lost. But the great thing before age 3 is that with therapies and pediatric rehab, the brain can make new connections.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we pushed so hard for so long, and even beyond age 3, it's really been a marathon.
Yeah, and by the trial was in 3 years. By that time, she had progressed to how far, do you think?
So I can tell you exactly because I had just had my second child, Grace.
Yeah.
Literally, I just got out of the hospital. So with Claire, because what I heard from some of the jury members is because she was developmentally delayed, but because she was walking and talking, by that point, a couple of the felony charges were knocked down to misdemeanors.
Yeah, misdemeanor.
Like a traffic ticket.
You must have been furious.
Yes, I was furious. I was shocked because she was in the hospital for 8 days. She almost didn't survive this.
Mm-hmm.
And to hear that because she was walking and talking, she's okay, no.
By what age did she blend in finally in regular school? When did that happen?
So she was never held back or anything. As she got older, it became challenging because she didn't have, her disability wasn't physical, like she wasn't in a wheelchair.
Right.
Her skills were very splintered. Even for a trained professional as myself and other teachers, it was very confusing to figure out how to help Claire.
Yeah.
For example, in kindergarten, her reading level, she was reading Junie B. Jones chapter books.
Yeah.
So her fluency was like way up, but then her vocabulary was high, but then her comprehension was low.
So she could read like this, but to understand what you read was a little bit low, right?
Yes.
And when did that start to improve?
So with all the help and special education that she received in school, it was a constant struggle. I'll be honest, it was a constant struggle. Math, the part of the brain that was hit the hardest, math was her largest struggle.
The largest.
But she struggled along the way, and even expressing, being able to prove her knowledge to the teachers was very difficult for Claire. She learned quickly to say, in like a sharing circle in kindergarten, to say pass or I don't know.
There you go.
Because it takes her a longer time to process information.
Yeah.
And as a former teacher, when a student doesn't answer a question, then you try to think of a different way to phrase the question and ask it again. And so we had to, the teachers and I learned not to overwhelm her with more information that she takes more time to process, but maybe just to prepare her ahead of time with some key points to chunk the information of what, especially as she got older, because as we know, in the older grades, there's more information. There's, it goes from learning concrete concepts to abstract. So.
Now what is she doing now?
Yes.
She's in her, what is she doing now? Does she work or what is she up to?
So she's 22.
Yeah.
She graduated high school. She went to college. She was able to attend some college coursework. And to make a long story short, she did graduate. Her main goal was to graduate from something. And when she heard that I was enrolling into massage therapy, because I was changing paths from being an educator to, I always wanted to be a licensed massage therapist. She just decided she wanted to know if there was math involved in the program. There wasn't. So we did the program together at Lincoln Tech and in Rhode Island, and she graduated the program. She has her license in Massachusetts. She's currently not using it for the moment.
License to teach?
License to massage people.
Oh, she turned. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Same as with Mom. Oh,
Yes.
great. Yeah. Oh, that's great.
She had trouble passing the NBLEX that Rhode Island. She has to pass the NBLEX, the state licensing exam, and she tried to pass it one time, and then she was unsuccessful.
I could see. Well, this brings up, when I was reading this, I was thinking, we had a pretty horrible experience. After my son was born, he was maybe 3-4 months old, and I was so exhausted, and I just, for some reason, the whole thing, I was a drain. So I thought, well, let's find somebody part-time, something like that, and just, he can go part-time, then he'll come right home. I don't know where we found these people, but the little van would come and get him, and I'd put him in his little seat, and I trusted. They took him up to the part of the same town. One day, he came home, and I saw, the little fontanelle that babies have, right up at the top? It was like black and blue. And I'm like, what the hell is that? And either I called or they tried to tell me, oh, it's a rash. I'm like, no, it ain't. So we took him right up to the pediatrician, and he just looked at that, and he said, that's not a rash. Like we didn't know. I think he said, I can file what is it? F-14? Why does that come to my mind? Some sort of a thing. I don't know how that didn't get done. But immediately, I just took my son out. I said, no, he's not going anymore. And I did due diligence, and I found them something else. That did work, thank God, but that was really scary. I mean, he was like probably still a newborn. How the heck did that happen? Did he fall on his head? Did one of the other kids, he was the baby in the group, go like this? The years later, he might have been, Michelle, 7 or 8 years old, and we had gone out for just an hour or so, and come back, and we had gotten a teenage girl to come and just stay with him. He usually did great. They'd usually bring crafts and stuff like that. This gal didn't. And as we were walking up the steps into the house, we looked through the living room. I said, my God, he was petrified and crying, and she was yelling at him. I'm like, what did he, immediately, I think, what did he do? I don't know why, but I thought, oh my God, he must have really, we came in and she went silent, sort of, and I thought, I think I told her, he doesn't usually act like this. He's fine when we go out. He always was, even as a baby. So, needless to say, I never had her come back again, and I don't think I ever found out, either from him or from her, what happened. I'll probably never know. But that's twice. Nothing compared to what you went through, but it is scary.
Yes.
Really, thank God the second time around we found a good place for him. But it was really, I think I finally, when he went to school, I said, you know what, he's not going to be a latchkey kid, or I'm not sending him to daycare. I used to be a nanny. I'll become a nanny again, and I took care of 2 other kids in the same town, kind of like he had a brother and a sister. He doesn't see it that way, but I thought, good part is I'll be home for him. We'll be there for him and them. He'll never have to be turnkey. And it's like a team. We're musketeers. We'll all do it together. If one has to go to the doctor, we'll all go. I thought it was pretty cool. So I guess he did nice. Well, he was an only child. And he probably wasn't crazy about the other 2. But it kept him safe. Michelle, before we close, one more time, how can they get a hold of your book, Claire's Voice?
Sure. So on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple Books, or for a personalized copy from my website, michellefishpaw.com.
Parents, you got to read it, especially if you've got a young one that you're thinking of sending to daycare. Read this. Claire's Voice. True story. Her daughter had, not even a year old, shaken baby syndrome, and met with silence from the caretaker, who supposedly had a very good background. That is really scary. And an agency had her. You must have been, it must have been a feeling of absolute stunned that she would do that, and anger, grief, all the feelings, it's like, what were you thinking? What did your lawyer say after she got that slap on the wrist thing? Did he say it's not worth it to go after her anymore, or what?
So the state prosecutors, so when after the 2 counts got knocked down to misdemeanors, there was the 3rd count that was a hung jury for the attempted felonious assault. Mm-hmm. So I was ready to go back to trial because I was ready to roll the dice because I knew a felony needed to be on her record, especially since she was trying to still watch children when the cops came to arrest her. So we finally did get a felony on her record, and so I felt better about that.
Good, yeah. You did the right thing.
Yes.
You really did. If you're a parent going through this, you suspect anything, do not be a shy violet. Go for it, because that's your child. And if she's doing it to that child, has she done it before to someone else or in the future? We're going to wrap up. Claire, you got any, before we close, any more books coming?
So far, this is the only one.
Yep.
It was just published before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I've been busy just booking events, speaking events in Florida, Ohio. We'll travel anywhere for free just to get the word out. We're even donating a percentage of the books. We're not committed to any one charity, but in Florida we're donating a percentage of the book sales to the Children's Coalition.
That's great. That's really good. You're getting the word out. Thank you for being with us, Michelle. If you have another book coming on, or if you want to come on again and get the word out some more, just let me know, and we'll get you on, because, boy, you don't put it down. I mean, and your chapters are just so to the point and short. You can't put it down. Thank you for being with us.
Oh, thank you, Jan.
And we'll see you next time and be my guest.
On a shooting star, heading out toward a dream. Tomorrow's even closer than it seems.